Stand by. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for this Monday, April 3rd. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, thank you for tuning in. Marie Angelides is not here this evening, so I will be conducting the meeting. And as usual, we'll start with, we have some announcements.
Sure. If you have a couple time to go ahead while I get myself organized here, but I do have a couple.
All right. Well, I know that you're going to mention something about the Mass Recycle Award, right? Mass Recycle Award?
That wasn't one of mine. Go for it.
Oh, it's on the agenda. I guess it's just an announcement that Arlene Miller had won this award.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Arlene was honored with an award by the Massachusetts Recycling Association for her distinguished career of service to the community.
Yeah.
And for those who know Arlene, she never tires of talking trash, as she would say. And her work has really developed over time a very efficient means of disposing of our solid waste and our recyclables in a way that has not only saved the town many thousands of dollars over time, but also helped increase our revenue that we get paid for our recycled materials. And I think Long Meadow gets the highest payment in Western Massachusetts for its recyclable material, and not on a per capita basis, in total. And so in my time here, I've enjoyed working with Arlene. I know she continues to be a part of the discussion, so she's retired her position at DEP, but I know she's going to stay involved in making sure the town of Long Meadow has a great system going forward, so we congratulate her for that.
All right, thank you. Is there any other announcements from the Select Board?
Wait, I do have a couple more, Tom.
Yes.
So
Okay.
we've announced it for a couple of weeks, but I did see on the news tonight that people were still caught off guard by the start of the Converse Street construction project. Just another announcement that has started. It is a project being managed by Mass DOT, with Balthazar Construction being the contractor. All I can say is to motorists, please try and stay patient and heed traffic warning signs, and keep an eye out for the detail officers who are directing traffic in the site. And it's going to go on all summer, but for those who live on or frequent Converse Street, it's been a much needed project, and I think everyone will be very happy with the finished product. And the final announcement I have is we did get, as you know, the vote for a new DPW center is on the warrant. And we had developed a trifold brochure a few years ago when we kind of got the process started. We've made some updates to it to reflect the work that has been done, and we have these available. I think the electronic copies on the town's website, along with some new reports. But I'll pass these out to the board for your information, and we have a couple hundred at Town Hall. We'll be able to reproduce more and distribute them. So if people want to see a copy of this or anything else, give us a call.
Okay, great, thank you. And now, the Converse Street work, are they going to have to narrow to one lane at all, do you know?
I think at times they are.
Yeah.
And I should confess that I'm not 100% proficient with their traffic management plan. I know our police department and our Department of Public Works has been working with Mass DOT to determine all of that, but I don't have the answers off the top of my head.
Okay,
But there are times where, yes, it's going to be down to one lane.
all right, okay. All right, next would be resident comments. Anybody? Okay.
Pertaining just to what you spoke about, or is
Any-
what's on the agenda?
Anything.
No?
Anything you want?
Any resident can make a
Anything you
comment.
want to speak about.
Are
You
you
have 2
giving
to 3 minutes.
You giving that to me to take?
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome.
If you're a resident, you're
Yes,
welcome to.
Mr. Pete.
If you want to, you could sit up here and introduce yourself, tell us
No, okay.
your name and your address, and
Thank you.
and you make your comment to the board.
Sure, my name's Christine Forrester, vegan, and I live at 74 Dunn Road in Long Meadow. And I noticed on the agenda today, where one of the topics was going to be the Bernie Road crossing, and I just wanted to voice my opinion on that. Clearly, I agree that something needs to be done. It was a horrific accident. Warren was a neighbor of mine, and I'm friends with his sister. And the reason I'm here is I just wanted to say I hope the proper equipment can be installed there, not to have that closed. And the reason I say that I don't want it closed is it's our access route, or emergency route. If we need one where we live, we always have to cross over the tracks. And if Emerson Road is closed for maintenance reasons, for emergency reasons, we've not been able to cross that, and we have to use the Bernie Road, our Tina Lane railroad crossing. And putting Jersey barriers or permanent structures of that nature wouldn't benefit us at all. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
comments. Any other resident comments tonight? All right. Well, I guess we can move on to the town manager report.
Thanks, Tom. So, to build on Christine's comment, we are, and we'll be talking about this in a little bit in the agenda, but we have been looking at the crossing and figuring out what are our next steps. Nobody who's involved in this now was really involved in the early 90s when this effort was engaged the last time around. So to some extent, we are, I guess, starting from scratch. Chief Stankiewicz is kind of leading the ground level effort to work with the Amtrak investigators and the Federal Railroad Administration local point of contact to make sure we're having a discussion. And as we'll discuss in a little bit, we'll have some updates from our state legislative delegation about kind of addressing this at a higher level as well. The kind of big, somewhat disappointing news is the fact that the 6-town regional dispatch center that we've spent a couple of years working on has basically, in large part, disbanded. And I go into some level of detail. The basic takeaway is there was growing frustration with the pace of the work and the level of certitude we had about the state's contribution to a combined dispatch center. We were still challenged by finding a site, and we were beginning the conversation about the allocation formula. And we were very close, I think, to really getting it all done, but there was a few communities that just felt like they couldn't wait anymore and had spent enough time and didn't think that looking ahead that the state was going to deliver the level of contribution that was needed to make it go. I think we learned a lot through the process. We have a district agreement that would have been the governance structure for the 6-town rec. I think that governance structure will work really well. In fact, I know that the discussion about regional dispatch continues, although with a smaller group. Mm-hmm. In fact, we had discussions today about some of the towns sticking together and looking at other alternatives. When we looked at the cost analysis for what we called Westcom, it clearly showed that collectively towns spend more on dispatch than they do as a group, meaning individually and cumulatively they spend far more than they would as a unified group.
Yeah.
And so the concept of regional dispatch providing better service and saving money, I think, was proven, even if there was some question about is all the data correct, were the numbers correct. I think it still worked. And I know the state wants to see regional dispatch centers. It's still a priority for them, so I don't think this is the end of a discussion about combining dispatch centers from some of our surrounding communities. It's just disappointing that the effort we had spent so much time on, kind of fell apart right at the end. When I was talking to the communities who were voting to withdraw, I likened it to when Seattle threw on 2nd and goal in the Super Bowl, and it just feels like we were so close to nailing everything down, and to have 3 towns essentially vote to withdraw at that moment was disappointing, but understandable from their perspective. We're all frustrated by a lack of certainty on several fronts, but the one thing that was not uncertain is that the communities are committed to the idea of providing the highest quality dispatch service, and doing that on a regional basis is still going to be a part of our future. It's just going to be a little further off for some communities than others. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone has any comments, but I know, this group has spent a fair amount of time, discussing that issue. We had presenters several times to us regarding regional dispatch. And, I think that there are some folks who felt it was a good way for us to save money on having an up-to-date dispatch center, because we would share the cost with other towns. And it is disappointing, but there's a couple of towns that are still interested, right? One over the river, is it Agawam and
Southwick.
East Long Meadow?
Well, Southwick, basically, even though, and I don't want to speak for other towns, but even though Hamden did vote to withdraw from Westcom, I know they're still interested in partnering with Long Meadow and East Long Meadow, and Southwick are still involved. And I will tell you that Ludlow and Wilbraham would probably also acknowledge that they expect to be a part of a regional dispatch center at some point in time in the future. We just weren't on a timeline that could meet their needs. So again, I do think there is going to be a regionalization of dispatch functions in this area. We are still pursuing it with just maybe different dance partners. But to put it in perspective, and I'm going to use round numbers because there were some variables in the numbers. I mean, the data that Long Meadow produced that was very accurate. But other towns, because there was different levels of reporting, wouldn't swear to the accuracy of their contribution, or not the contribution, but their current costs. But basically, if you take the 6-town current budgets for dispatch, it was $3.5 million, add it all up. The operating budget for the regional dispatch, all in, was figured to be about $2.5 million. So that's $1 million that cumulatively would have saved. Now, some towns, like, we wouldn't save as much as other communities, but we would get the benefit of the higher level of service. We have civilian dispatchers. We have a very efficient service for the price we pay. Some communities have sworn police and firefighters doing their dispatch, so that's obviously a much higher cost that they pay today. So in a civilian dispatch, they see a greater savings. But again, cumulatively, everyone would spend less, and then the future cost avoidance of major communications and other equipment upgrades that the state would pay for if you're in a regional dispatch would be gravy for those savings. So it's definitely, I definitely learned, at least from my perspective, it's there. It's just going to look different than we've been working on.
Right.
I can't believe that part of the problem was they couldn't find a location. Must have been that everybody wanted it, I mean,
Well,
plenty of locations around.
it was complicated by the fact that you're still 2 or 3 years away from breaking ground and tying up a privately owned property for 2 or 3 years. We'd have to buy an option. We didn't really have money for that in our grant budget. There weren't really any available municipal sites that were shovel-ready, so to speak. We had worked on a site in Ludlow, but some of if X, Y, and Z fall into place, this is a great site. Well, X, Y, and Z never fell into place, and we ended up dropping the site because we couldn't get over those kind of threshold criteria. And the state had made it clear they were very, very reluctant to build a new building because there were vacant land options, but the state's built a lot of buildings. The state has a vast inventory of buildings that they underutilize. Well, we said, fine, give us the DCAM list, and we'll take one of your buildings. We don't care where it goes. Nobody cares where it goes. We'll do. And they said, well, you have to find your own site.
Yes.
Stephen,
Please.
Excuse me. The question I have is about level of service. I was in it for the increased level of service. I mean, my personal interest, and so, the towns that dropped out, do they expect that they're going to be able to make the capital investments needed to have enhanced 911? And I mean, just from a practical matter, they're going to have to make some massive individual investments, and once they do that, they're probably going to say, well, we made the investment, why should we go regional? So was that the sense you got, that as they dropped out, they said, well, we're prepared to make our own capital investments and have the capabilities?
There's a lot of variables. In each community is different. Some communities have more dispatch capacity than others, so it's not as big a drop for them to not be in it. Some communities they have sworn personnel and they want to convert to civilian dispatch, and they feel like they need to conquer that before they can go into regional. There's a bunch of different variables, and I don't want to speak on behalf of each town, but other than to say, each community had, I think, valid reasons for not wanting to go forward at this time. And the biggest thing was we just couldn't get the state 911 department to give us the certainty that we were on the right track, so to speak. And I don't want to suggest that the 911 department, in that for 911 is a division of the Executive Office of Public Safety, so they're the kind of funding agency and the regulatory agency that helps develop these regional dispatch centers. And they've been a good partner. They have funded us. They've given us grant money. I spoke to them today to kind of say, here's where we're at. But there's uncertainty with the change in administrations. This was something that the Patrick Murray administration started and was a priority for them. It remains a priority for the Baker-Polito administration, but they are rethinking their approach and how they're pushing communities to approach this. And that rethinking changed, essentially, we started this, in effect, under the Patrick Murray administration.
Right.
And now the shift at the Baker-Polito administration level has changed everything down the line, and that was probably the single biggest factor, is the change in approach at the state level. They are still supportive of regional dispatch centers. They want to continue working with us to see what we can do. But Westcom, as we knew it, is no more.
So Stephen, should we be rethinking where we're going? I mean, I have to tell you that three communities is a whole lot different than 6, both in your financial commitment that you make and also the level of service you potentially get, from my perspective, especially when there are discontinuous communities. I mean, Southwick is, there's Agawam between us and, a river and Agawam between us and Southwick, and although that should make a big difference, there's some impact there. So,
Well, I mean,
what's
to
the
answer your question,
process by which we...
the answer to your question, everything we've learned over the last 3 years has convinced myself, Chief Dearborn, and Chief Stankiewicz that grouping with one or more communities, another community, or more than one more community, will provide a higher level of service. The more, I think, depending on how it's framed and what level of reimbursement you get from the state, you can also save money. But right now, we have one dispatcher on shift at any given time. If you partner with one more community, you can have 2 dispatchers and a supervisor to handle spikes in phone calls for an incident in one town or the other. So this high level of service you're talking about, Mark, there's absolutely no doubt that we will get a higher level of service, even if we partner with just one more community. And if we spent the same amount, I think we've all said, if it drives up costs, then we should avoid that. But if we get, for the same money, higher level of service, we definitely know we would get that. And I still think that the metrics show it will yield some kind of cost savings. The amount of cost savings is it depends on the final structure. So, again, I don't want to dwell too much on it. I mean, we spent a long time talking about it in the past, but we're still working at it. So regional dispatch isn't dead. It's just this one particular effort's hit a roadblock.
Tom, can I just suggest that we put aside time on a future meeting to, I'm not going to say strategize about it, but I think you ought to hear the feelings of the select board when it's a 2-town, 3-town as opposed to a 6-town. Maybe some of our thinking has changed also.
Well, we're going to present, like I said, we got a couple irons in the fire right now, and so at a future day, we'll have something more concrete to present, so you can give feedback to our next phase proposal, which would be good.
All right, but that's a good, I'll give Marie that suggestion, Mark, that we'll bring it up in a future meeting. And now the last question is, can people text our police department right now? Yeah, and so, we have to move in that direction. I mean,
Well, we're not. I mean, there's no local dispatch equipped to do that. And the state police aren't even equipped. That's called Next Gen.
Yeah.
And the state police are working towards that. Right now, if you call from your cell phone 911 from here, it goes to Northampton and then gets transferred to our local dispatch center. So our goal all the way along has been get ready for Next Gen and take cell calls locally, because right now most communities do not take their own cell calls locally.
Right, okay. Well, great, thank you.
Just real quick, the pilot program, we've talked about it before. I won't dwell on it other than we may be making a request for a special town meeting within the town meeting. We should know about that in the next week or so. Speaking of collaboration in law enforcement, we did enter an agreement with the Hampden County Sheriff's Department to do a regional lockup. This is something I think the chief has reported on in the past in his monthly reports. All of the chiefs in Western Mass had pushed the Sheriff's Department to do this because and we go through this locally, you have to bring in cell monitors that are kind of on-call, part-time, relatively low-paid employees, so it's hard to find good people to do that. And if somebody gets arrested late Friday night, you're babysitting them for 2 days until a magistrate can come in. and it adds a lot of cost and, quite honestly, a lot of headaches to our operations. The regional lockup takes that off the table and makes it centralized at the jail, where corrections officers are going to be the ones watching people who have been arrested, which is appropriate. So, and I think the agreement should have been in the packet.
It was.
And I'm,
Yeah.
sorry, do you have a question about that?
Well, there was one question there. You know, at one point, they said that they have the right to refuse any potential person that they didn't want to take. And you know, generally, sheriff's department jails don't refuse anybody. And so I was kind of curious what that criteria
I think
might
that was
be,
probably, you know, just in case language.
just in case. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In case you showed up.
So,
Yeah. He's in jail every day.
yeah, they never turned me away.
Yeah. For the viewing audience, you should probably clarify that you work at the
Yes, I
jail.
work in the jail. That's the only reason I know.
So just a couple another quick items. I'm pleased to announce that we have, I've made a selection for the next COA director. I found out today that he had notified or conditionally notified his employer, because obviously he'll have to be here on the 18th for select board confirmation. Jim Layden, who is currently the assistant or deputy executive director at the West Springfield Council on Aging. We had a really, as you saw in my report, a very deep pool of candidates. And despite the depth of quality of candidates, Jim really stood out amongst all of them. And you know, it's a great hiring for us. He came very highly recommended, and I'm looking forward to introducing you to him. And that's I'm excited. I get excited about new hires because it shows growth and moving forward. But I think Jim's going to bring a level of experience to the center that is going to be very beneficial for the town. And then finally, we did collect some donations to offset the funeral expenses for the Coles family, and I underreported it in my town manager's report. I had said it was $2,000. I learned today that it was actually $3,554 that the town collected, town employees collected.
Great.
For the Coles family. So, you know, we wish it weren't so, but we were happy that we were able to support the family in that way.
All right. Great. Well, thank you for the report. Any other comments or questions about town manager report?
Yeah, just a quick
Yeah.
question.
Mark?
Stephen, you noted that you're going to appoint a new director of the COA. Normally, you'd submit the contract. When do you plan on doing that? Our next meeting?
Yeah, the 18th.
Oh, it's the 17th.
There's a holiday.
Oh, so it is the 18th. Okay.
According to my calendar, it's the 18th.
Oh, yeah, it's Patriots Day. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the next item on the agenda is the Tina Lane closure of that road. And, you know, the board is kind of apprehensive about even discussing this issue because the investigation hasn't been finalized. And, but we have to take some actions really to make sure that our citizens are safe and our DPW workers. And so in terms of the closure, I know that it's a temporary closure, but you know, Mark, you had thought that we should make a vote on this. Steve?
Sorry, if I can,
Yeah.
Mark, jump in, because I want to give context.
Okay,
At least the
thanks.
context that when Tom and I were talking about putting on the agenda, I want at least the context that I was coming at it from, because I wanted to make a recommendation to the board. And basically, there's the issue with the rail crossing, as I addressed in my report. There was in the packet a letter from Senator Lesser, and I did speak with Representative Ash on Friday, and both of them are committed to taking the lead, essentially, to driving this issue at the state level, getting, we are trying to work it locally with our local contacts, with the stakeholders, and, stakeholders include Mass DOT, Federal Railroad Administration, Department of Public Utilities, Amtrak, but getting the attention at the secretariat level at the state is something that I think is going to have to be a part of this. And our delegation is going to take the lead in getting that done, and getting that meeting done, so we can figure out where we're going. But in the meantime, I think I'd reported that we had temporarily closed with some traffic control, saw horses, and some signage to prevent the increased traffic. We saw people driving up Tina Lane, like I said, attributable largely, I think, to curiosity about the accident. But we also understood the concerns of the folks on West and Dunn roads about having an emergency means of egress, and we didn't want to prevent that from being able to happen as well. So in balancing that out, the police chief, just for the safety in the short term, voted to, or took action to close the street temporarily. And there's a limit to the comparison, I understand that, but just when you look at taking actions on streets, the example of the Community House Road is really the context of this, where for the sake of the election, the police chief, because he knew it was going to be a public safety issue, as he does every year, temporarily closed the community house, made it one-way traffic in front of the community house. The select board then voted to do that on a temporary basis while we evaluated it, and then the board took a further step to permanently make it one-way. That's basically the kind of mechanisms we're looking at now. Vote to affirm the temporary closure of Tina Lane, and we probably would use sawhorses or some other kind of barrier that could be moved if needed, while we evaluate the rail crossing, while we get some more information from the state and figure out what our pathway forward is. And once we do, then the select board can take a future act to either keep it closed or reopen it or do whatever is appropriate at that time. There really isn't anything to discuss about the accident. The investigation is ongoing. Unfortunately, and I was talking to some representatives from the media, and they're saying, what's the timeline and what's going to happen? And those are answers we don't have. And I think it's been clear from the reporting, especially the detailed reporting, that really went through the timeline, that it's not simple. It doesn't seem to be do A, B, C, and then D, and it's all taken care of. It doesn't seem to be that way, and so we're trying to rebuild this process. So that would be so the recommendation on behalf of both the police and fire chief is for the board to vote to temporarily close the road. And I have talked to, one more point, I have talked to the DPW director. We have the fillable Jersey barriers, those orange ones we used on another street that we closed. I don't know that that's the right technique. I don't know that the sawhorses that are there are the right ones either, but certainly somewhere in between would be what we would look to use.
You have to be able to open it up.
Yeah.
You're wanting to go from a temporary closure to an approved closure from the select board,
On a temporary basis.
but it's still approved closure. You've done it under a law enforcement issue right now. Okay, and I have voiced my concern that this is a litigation item, and I think this discussion should be an executive session, period. Your police have already taken the action. The road is safeguarded at this point. I would refrain from this board being involved in any direction on that until we've been appraised by legal staff as to what we should be doing. The road is secured right now, and it's as secured as we could do it. But I don't want to move forward until because it is a litigation item. And we have been told by our legal staff that we should not be engaged in open discussions on this issue. So I question why it's before this board again tonight, and we're sitting here discussing an issue which we've been advised not to discuss. Because there is not an issue. The issue, you've already resolved the issue. It's been temporarily closed, and it can stay temporarily closed under the direction of your police chief for public safety.
Well, I guess I would just comment that, that the town is wondering what the select board feels. Are we going to take some actions to protect citizens? And if we didn't mention on the agenda, I think it would be pretty clear that we weren't sure what we were going to do. I mean, we do have to wait until the investigations come in, but I think it's a way for the town to know that the board is willing to take whatever actions are reasonable to safeguard that intersection and, protect people. We do have a lot of folks who use it, especially during the leaf drop-off period. But, I think as a board, we should discuss it. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments on.
I would only get the point across because, it's an important issue that I would say that in looking at past discussions is very frustrating, and I would just let people know that I don't think anybody here is gonna let this, is just gonna drop this. This has got, somehow, there's gotta be a resolution to this, you know?
Okay.
So
Mark?
Richard, I agree that we have to be careful that we not take action before the investigations are completed. And from that perspective, I'm very concerned about doing anything. On the other hand, I think we've identified, it's been identified, it exists as a potentially, and in fact, in the past, a problem intersection. I'd actually put together something that I was going to propose as a motion. I'm going to enter it as a motion, just so that if you can just pass these along. And Debbie, I've got one for you too. And I'd like to enter it as a motion, see if there's a discussion about it. So I'd move that Tina Lane, Bernie Road be closed to through traffic, the Amtrak Railroad crossing, and in order to achieve this closure, that 1, barricades be installed approximate to and on both sides of the railroad tracks, with the barricades to be equivalent to Jersey barricades, that is, of sufficient construction as to not be movable without equipment or able to be evaded by any motor vehicle. And 2, that signage be installed on the barricades and on both sides of the tracks, placed sufficiently to notify eastbound potential users of this public way that the road is closed at the railroad tracks, and further signage to direct westbound traffic seeking a route to West Road or Dunn Road to cross the railroad track at the Emerson Road crossing. And I don't think that's the first part of my motion. But I'm going to further move that the road closure remain in effect with barricades in place until such time as the following 6 items are achieved. 1, all active investigations into the accident that resulted in the death of Warren Coles are concluded, including but not limited to reports by Amtrak and the Mass State Police. 2, those accident investigation reports and their recommendations are delivered to the Select Board. 3, recommendations to improve safety at the Tina Lane, Bernie Road Amtrak crossing are submitted to the Select Board by the Town of Long Meadow Police and DPW. 4, a public hearing's been held to review the recommendations of the accident investigation teams and solicited resident input regarding remediation. 5, that the Select Board has reviewed, deliberated, and acted upon those recommendations, ordered and implemented those that it deems appropriate. And 6, that the ordered recommendations are fully implemented to the satisfaction of the Select Board. That's my motion. If there's a second, I'd then like to discuss it.
Any second on this motion?
I'm kind of uncomfortable doing that. Right now, it's as Richard said, it's under control of the police. I'd rather have, town council, legal input and get through the investigation before, it's secure now.
Okay, well, my reasoning for doing it in the form of a motion, Bill, and I am sensitive to where it is 1, I think that there's practically a limit to how and who can close roads, and I think the Select Board, we've demonstrated in a couple of instances, and Stephen used as an example in front of the Community House, and there have been others, that the Select Board's responsibility to close roads. And the reason I put this the way I did is because historically it's been discussed before. And each time it's been discussed before, my understanding is that it kind of faded and something else came along. And the wording here that said these will remain in effect and requiring public hearings and other things, and will remain in effect until the Select Board does something. So those barricades, and I'm sure that the residents of West Road, Dunn Road, and other people are going to be, so what are you doing, what are you going to do, what are you going to do about it, will be in the face of the Select Board, making sure that this doesn't suffer the fate of prior attempts by town officials to do something with that intersection. So this was really my attempt to, A, as Stephen said, formalize what's already been done, and B, make sure that it stays in, that something gets done, so in terms of a permanent final action.
Any other comments or questions?
No, it's saying what I stated before. I don't disagree with having the chief of police secure it at this point, and I think we should leave it that way until we've been able to talk with our legal staff and get some guidance moving forward. I don't think the board should be taking these actions. The issue is secure right now. There's no harm, there's no risk at this point. The other issues that was brought before the board on previous accidents, if you read into the history, there was a lot of other surrounding documents. The fact is that only, I think, 440 foot of that road is a public road, as shown on our inventory in town, and the rest of the road is a private road. It was supposed to have been put on the warrant back in '93, and for some reason, the issue was never put on the warrant to have it accepted as a public road. That was a requirement to be able to get the state to come in and put money towards putting the closure in. And, you know, when you get back into the minutes, sometimes it's very difficult to find out why something slipped, but I know Dave Martell at a meeting said it would be on the warrant that year, and it never showed up on the warrant, although there was other closures and other restrictions placed on the warrant. So it wasn't the fact that the board wasn't working on them, but for some reason that particular issue didn't move forward, and we don't have the history on why it didn't. I certainly don't. But I know at this point, once you cross over that and go into the dirt field, that's a private road. It's not a public way, listed on our inventory. Now, Stephen and I have chatted, maybe it has been accepted, but it does not look like it was ever accepted by the state. In fact, we shouldn't be doing any maintenance on that unless it's authorized at a town meeting to be expending any dollars on a private way. So there are some other issues that float on this thing. But the bottom line is, it's secured right now. So
Right.
there's no reason for this board to take any action beyond what has already been done.
I think I'm just, so I want to,
Yeah.
if I may, Tom,
Yes.
we need to resist the urge to associate what I just recommended with the accident in terms of the investigation, all those other things. I mean, I think about the accident every day, but I compartmentalize that situation, all the details of it, all of the spillover effects, both from a personal standpoint of our town departments, but also from an administrative standpoint for the things we have to do as a result. This is just a simple, to me, recommendation to take a one-off action and keep it as simple as possible, because I agree with Richard and Mark and Bill that we don't want to make it seem like we're operating too reactionary. But this is something we've already done. I was looking for an endorsement of the approach. Consensus by the board is fine for me at this point. Sounds like it's there in terms of keeping the road, the barriers that we have up.
Right.
And we'll go from there. But it's important to know that, just so everyone's clear where this is coming from, the recommendation to keep Tina Lane temporarily closed is separate from Colsey's accident. It's actually to reduce the likelihood, or hopefully eliminate the likelihood of another one. That's the only reason. And so I'm happy to leave it at that. We will keep the barricades in place. We may beef them up a little bit with some barrels and reflectors if there's no objection, and we will. I mean, I think we all share a goal of figuring this out as fast as we possibly can, and I regret that this didn't happen many years ago. I wish it had happened many years ago, but all we can do is control what's in our hands today.
So I guess the question is for Stephen or for anybody else, until when? And
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, at some point, there needs to be some action. And I still fall back on the responsibility for closing roads at the select board. And yes, the police can do it under an emergency situation, and they did that at that time. But at some point, it ceases to remain an emergency situation. And just like in front of the community house ceased to be election day.
Right.
And then it falls back to somebody else to do something about it. And I just think that, you know, there's a sense of the town ought to, you know, the select board needs to understand that, you know, that there is an investigation, there are multiple investigations, there's going to be a report, and hopefully some action will happen as a result of those reports. And that's all I was trying to do, is say, okay, let's wait, expect those, wait for them, let's not act before we know what we're acting on, but, let's not take permanent action right now, but let's do something in the interim to make sure that roadway is safe.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank you, Mark, for putting this proposal together and really identifying the kinds of things that need to be put in place. When we have a full board, this may come up again. I'm sure that Marie will be reviewing our meeting, and she may want to bring this up.
Why don't you pass it on to the legal team?
I was just
Just
going
give
to
it to the
say,
lawyer and ask him.
Mark,
I mean,
I
give it
think
to the
this is a
people that
great
are holding this
idea. If this had been
investigation.
reviewed by town council, I'd be way more comfortable. The issue around the rail, being owned by Amtrak, private road, town road, I mean, it can get very, legally messy, I think, so I'd really rather have it reviewed.
Right. I think it's also good that we're going to have our state senator and our state representative involved in trying to sort this thing through, because, yes, we have to have some timelines. We can't just let this go on. We had a resident tonight from Dunn Road who was concerned about how long that's going to be closed, and, and when the right kind of safety equipment can be put in place. So
So is this going to go on to the legal team?
yeah. if we could
Status
submit
quo,
this.
status quo on terms of
Yeah, you're
the,
going to take the motion and give it to the lawyer?
You could have the lawyer,
we can. I mean,
Look at it.
I'll be candid with you. I mean,
and then maybe you could get back to Marie on it, what they...
tying it to the investigation is a non-starter.
No,
In terms of future action, fine, but tying it to a state police investigation and a public hearing on their investigation, that's not,
Okay.
I don't think, a realistic expectation at the end of the process. They may do it on their own, but it's not our investigation, it's the state police's. But I think we should, if we're going to send this to town council, it's certainly, if nothing else, Mark, it's certainly a good list of things that we want to see, like outcomes that we're waiting for in the future, so it keeps us focused on what are the next steps and what are the things we're waiting to see.
All right. Great. We have a couple of minutes, and then I was asked to move the NOI request for restoration of Fanny Stebbins Wildlife Refuge up on the agenda, and I believe you folks are here. So what we'll do is just, if we could just approve the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the March 13th minutes for the budget forum?
I move we approve the minutes of March 13th, 2017.
Okay. Second?
is this 13? I abstain.
The budget form.
The budget forum. You'll second it? Okay. All those in favor vote? Okay. Abstaining? You have one person?
I wasn't here.
You're abstaining, yeah, okay.
I'll move we approve the minutes of the March 13th special meeting of the Select Board.
A second?
Second.
Okay.
Abstain.
All those in favor? Okay, and
I'll move we approve the minutes of the March 20th regular Select Board meeting.
okay,
Second.
second? Okay. Those in favor? All right, great. So if I could ask the folks from who are here to discuss the NOI request for Fanny Stebbins Wildlife Refuge to step up. We did get quite an extensive amount of documentation. I was reading and reading, and it kept going and going, and a lot of different plans, and so we had a refresher on the types of invasive species that are down there and their location, and not exactly how many plants, but quite a bit.
We probably got more than we needed to.
Yeah, so if you could introduce yourselves, that was
Let me
that.
take the lead from
Okay.
Al Laxo, Conservation Commission Chair, and with me is Karen Lombard of the Nature Conservancy,
Okay,
and Dave Sagan from Sylvia Conti. And also back here is David Miller
all right.
on the Fanny Stebbins Wildlife Refuge Board. The reason why we're here is that Fanny Stebbins has received a federal grant to reforest the area in the floodplain. including management of invasive plant species. So because this is going on in the floodplain, it requires a notice of intent to be filed with the local Conservation Commission. And this is a large area of land, and the regulations require that the property owners approve the filing of the notice of intent. And if you were able to work your way through the little bit of documentation that was Marie supplied you with, there are 4 parties who have land down there. And one is Fanny Stebbins, the other is Sylvia Conti, the third is the Tennessee Gas Pipeline, and the fourth one is the town of Long Meadow, because we have 3 conservation lots in the middle of that property. And when the project was being developed, we were visited at the Conservation Commission and asked if we wanted to be included in the overall project. And we gave our assent. We have approvals from 3 of the parties, so the reason why we're here tonight is to get the final approval from the Select Board and representing the town of Long Meadow.
All right,
And with that, we're open to questions.
all right. I don't know if anyone has any specific
Well,
questions.
I would say, this is a huge undertaking, huh? How, I'm just curious, how you figured out what were the indigenous species? I mean, there's so much invasive stuff down there.
Well, we have a forest ecologist on the team, and he, and also a contractor that specializes in invasives control. So, since they're specialists in that area, they were able to go out and map the invasives and distinguish them from the native species. So,
And,
This is going to be what, like a 3-year project?
It's going to be 3 years, but we are allowed to issue an order of conditions for 5 years. And we talked about that when we opened up the hearing last week, and so that's on the table for 5 years.
all right. Anyone else have any questions regarding the project?
How many acres is, how many acres is going to be under the proposal?
3.
For the restoration?
Yeah.
300,
well, yeah, the
244, I believe, is the actual restoration acre.
344?
right 244, but we'll actually be treating or planting less acreage than that.
Yeah.
So probably a total of 80, less than 100 acres, probably in total of invasives treatment plus
Yeah.
planting the fields that are.
So the purple colors
Yeah.
are the actual invasives that have already been mapped,
Right.
and the restoration will be happening in the green area. But you can see there's a few of the smaller areas for invasive species.
Right.
That'll
On a large-scale project like this, it takes 3 years to implement. What's the long-term history? What type of commitment is there to keeping it invasive-free after that point?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
do you want me to take it?
Right, you should, because you, yeah.
Sure, so yeah, there's definitely, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is one of the ones that will actually go in and partner with this area, and that's who I am here to represent, the Partners of Fish and Wildlife Service.
Mhm.
So we actually will go in and we can help maintain this over the long term for long-term protection.
There's long-term grant money
Yeah,
that's,
so NRCS will also receive an easement that will be for permanency on the land for the restoration efforts.
Mhm. Okay. Is it all federal and state money, or is there any private money going into this?
The Conservancy hopes to raise a little bit of private money to supplement, to pay for our time on the project, because the federal money is just paying for boots on the ground
Right.
type work.
The key point is we're not asking you for any money.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
yes, right. So the town is getting some treatment, with the federal funds.
Yeah, I took and clipped my wallet tight when you walked in, Al. No,
T-Rex.
that's great. It's a fantastic, it's a wonderful opportunity. It's a beautiful place to do it, too, because there's a lot of people visit the area, so the efforts will be very apparent. I just wonder about the long term, like 50 years from now, will we still have this beautiful area? You'll be gray-haired by then, but there is a long-term plan to keep it
Yeah.
invasive-free.
Yep, so that easement is forever to be able to be protection.
Okay, great.
Yes, Mark?
There's a discussion in the NOI about a roadbed that's being removed, and the maps we had were, I was reading on a computer, so it's pretty small. Can you show us what that meant and where those road beds are? And
Yeah.
The road, the road is Meadow Road. Meadow Road begins at Long Meadow Street,
right,
and it used to run all the way down into the floodplain. When I-91 was under construction, Meadow Road was cut off. So right now, we go down to Meadow Road, it dead ends now at I-91. But then as you go across, all the original pavement and berms are still there. And from a hydrological standpoint, the presence of that artificial road bed creates a barrier because there is a swampy area that is, on some of the old maps, is identified as Raspberry Swamp, and that's because Raspberry Brook runs down through there.
I've been on this, it's a trail.
So that they've identified that to remove that is going to result in an improvement on the area.
Would that have any effect on the existing floodplain now?
Well, I looked at the elevations, and everything is basically in the floodplain, because that question came up at our Conservation Commission hearing about what is referred to as the hydrological impact of removing the berm. And as I say, when I went back and looked at the flood map, it's all floodplain to begin with, so it's, right now, it creates somewhat of a barrier, but it's, when it's removed, then you would have sheet flow then running from north to south,
Yeah.
but it's going to be minuscule.
so Al, this Bill just pointed out, so this is all well south of the Bark Hall Road overpass. Everything we're
Yes.
doing is south of that
Yes.
region. Okay.
Yeah, I think I may have cross-country skied on that old road. It's not easy to get through.
No, it's only, I think, half a foot above, so it's not much. And someone was down there this week from NRCS, and there's water flowing over it, but you
Oh.
can imagine, this week, there's sure to be water flowing over it, but, you know. in the
That's all
lower-
going to be removed.
Yeah, that'll be.
I mean, that's what I was reading, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's all. And somebody's planting, what did I say, 8,360 different things down there,
Yeah,
individual
well,
trees
Karen made a
and
point
trees
in
and
our
shrubs
meeting
and.
that when this is completed, this will be the largest forested floodplain along the Connecticut River watershed
Yeah.
all through that area.
410 miles, this is the gem on that entire
Yeah.
riverway. It's really, it's a very impressive area.
Yeah, that's great.
So all those fields will become forest over the long term.
Over the long
There'll
term.
be small trees to start.
And then
Not
the
if the
ponds
beavers have
are north
Right,
of
I
that.
know, right.
And the ponds are north of that. It really won't affect the ponds, because we have a lot of people who go birding there, and that's pretty, as you know. And so it wouldn't affect
The
those at
ponds are
all.
north of it.
Yeah, yeah. And some people are concerned about those growing in and becoming forests also. I mean, is that anything that you folks would look at, or?
So I can tell you, as the Fish and Wildlife Service, we own one of those ponds, this blue area right here.
Uh-huh.
And so we actively go in there and we treat for invasive plants right now. We treat for water chestnut. So
Okay.
we are monitoring them, but probably any dredging or thing like that would be a very long-term project, nothing on the plan.
All right. One of the concerns I had was always about, emergency vehicle access. If there was a fire there, with these plantings, would there still be a way to get vehicles in there to put out a forest fire?
Well, let me comment on
Yeah,
the gates.
yeah.
There are two roads going in. One is Pondside Road and the other is Bark Hall Road. And years ago, when all that area was basically turned over to the Conservation Commission,
Mm-hmm.
those roads were legally closed. And they were left open, however, there was so much vandalism going on down there that the Conservation Commission put in two gates at Pondside Road and the Bark Hall Road. So the Pondside one's north-south and Bark Hall runs east-west.
East-west, okay.
So that those gates were updated, I don't know, maybe 8 years or so ago by Fanny Stebbins because the other ones had deteriorated. And all the emergency forces have keys to get through there.
Okay,
So the fire department has keys, the police department has keys, the DPW has keys, Conservation Commission has keys, Amtrak has keys. And one of the key ones that's down there most often is the Tennessee Gas Pipeline people. And the reason for that is you go through Bark Hall, then you continue out and you take a left to what used to be West Road, and then as they continue south is where the Tennessee Gas Pipeline pumping station is.
right.
So they're in there quite often checking things and doing stuff.
Okay.
So it's been that way for quite a number of years, and fortunately, we haven't had any forest fires, but if they had a need to get through there, they could.
Yeah. And when you guys are doing the plannings and so forth, you look at that sort of access in case there is fire, that we would be able to get trucks in there?
Well, we're not going to be blocking any of those particular
Any of those
paths in our
particular paths,
restoration
right.
work. Those will
All
stay
right.
open as trails and, as much as roads as they are, they're
Yeah.
sort of trail/roads. Yeah.
So if you actually look at
Yeah.
the map too, they're actually outside of the
Right.
restoration area, because those are rights of way that other people have easements on that we're not able to do restoration on.
Okay. And for the restoration area, do we need any access to that for fire or anything? I mean,
Yeah,
if there
we-
would,
you
I
know,
know a
we-
lot of it's swamp, so the
Right.
raspberry swamp. would
Probably it's
be-
low risk.
But,
Would be it would be low risk for fire.
I mean,
Yes.
there's not going to be roads if that's what
Yeah.
you're asking, but
Yeah.
from what I've seen from forest firefighting, I mean, there definitely is UTV access that you'll be able to get down through all those trails.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be sure that, if something did happen, that we'd be able to get some trucks in nearby, one way or another.
We
So,
shouldn't be changing any of that. What you have now,
all
you
the way
should
out here.
continue to have.
Yeah.
This is a white
And
sandy
then,
beach. It's unbelievable.
there's some hiking trails down there that are kind of in disrepair, boardwalks and so forth. And will you folks be doing anything with those? It sounds like
So
you'll be doing
not-
some trails?
Not as part of this restoration, so this funding that's coming through NRCS is actually not allowed to be applied towards trails.
Okay,
But there is potential between TNC and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service long-term to be able to do some restoration. And our project leader, Andrew French, has expressed interest of developing a better trail system down there and improving it.
oh, that'd be great, yeah.
We're going to do some educational signage around the project as well, along the existing trails.
So Al, Fanny Stebbins at some point gave this land to the Nature Conservancy, is that?
David Miller is from Fanny Stebbins.
Okay.
In fact,
David,
this
do you want to
week, this
explain
week.
that?
So I'd be happy.
Excuse me, David.
You gotta use.
You got to
one.
use one of these mics here.
Because
So.
You can
otherwise
sit-
folks
you can
can't
sit
hear
here.
you at home. So,
I'd be happy to use the mic. David Miller, 47 Concord Road in Long Meadow. And I'm here representing Fanny Stebbins. Fanny Stebbins recognized the challenges with the trail some years ago, and we tried to identify a partner, and we've been blessed with the partnership that we were able to get. So the land was turned over to the Nature Conservancy just this week, gone to closing, gone to deed. The Fanny Stebbins group that owned the land received funding from the NRCS in terms, and our intent is to use that as a trust fund, basically, to support the efforts of the land. It was just over $200,000. That's separate from the funding for the restoration work. The Nature Conservancy will have title of that land for up to 5 years and then give it to Silvio Conti Fish and Wildlife once the restoration work is completed.
okay. All right, great. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions for the Fanny Stebbins? And, all right, well, I guess, so you're looking for a motion for us?
Yeah,
to-
we would like a motion that you approved, and then if, all we would need from Debbie is just an email to the Conservation Commission email account that you approve the notice of intent for the reforestation of the Fanny Stebbins Wildlife Refuge.
All right. do we need, if you have something?
No, I don't have any
No,
written, but
We count on Mark.
I'd certainly initiate the motion to
Yeah.
approve the NOI for the reforestation of the, what was the Fanny Stebbins Wildlife Now Nature Conservancy Conservation Area in the so-called meadows of Long Meadow.
Yeah, second.
So,
We have a second, okay. Any discussion on this, further discussion? No? Then we'll call for a vote.
Can I
All those,
ask
yeah.
a question?
oh,
Oh,
go.
it's actually for approval for the town lands, right?
for the town land.
It's for the 3 lots.
The 3
Three
lots.
lots.
Conservation
Okay. I don't know if
lots.
that covers, I just want to make sure that what you
Okay.
just did covers that, because DEP pointed out that.
All right. Well, could we add, Deb, do you think we could add that in somehow to mention that the 3 lots owned by the town will be, we approve the reforestation work? And then if you could just read it back once for us.
Motion to approve the NOI for reforestation of the area so-called Meadows of Long Meadow. And I gotta put in for 3 lots of town land somehow.
I mean, I guess I would just say for town lands as requested.
3 lots of town land.
No, just say for town lands as requested. Don't limit it to 3 lots in case there's a 4th lot that we're not aware of.
Town land is requested.
It's very confusing.
Okay. And Mark, that amendment is
Yep, that's
okay with
fine.
you, and our seconders, that's
Yep.
fine? All right, any further discussion? No? Then let's vote on it. All those in favor? Okay. so-
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the fact that you moved it up for us since our
Thank you
visitors
very
came
much.
in from out of town.
Oh, great, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I'll remember this next time.
Hold on to that, or?
Next time
No,
I have to
you
the
can call
Conservation
me.
Commission, I'm gonna remember this.
All right. Let's see, we have a few things here, but I wonder if we should have the town moderator come up to discuss the open forums. Would that be okay with everybody if we
Sure.
move that up? All right.
Rebecca?
So Rebecca, well, we're going to move you up in the agenda, make it a little easier. We appreciate you being here. But, we don't want to be here too much longer. So, okay, so you were going to be holding 2 open forums, and if you could just start introducing yourself and your standard.
Rebecca Townsend, 160 Ely Road, Town Moderator. I am here to talk about the 2 upcoming DPW forums, or forums that we're going to be having, primarily to discuss the in-depth DPW task force report, to allow residents to have the chance to get questions answered in a informal way, I should say. It's, let me get the dates out. The first date is April 11th, and the second date is April 26th.
Yeah.
They both start at 6:30 p.m. and will end by 9:30 p.m.
Okay.
They will occur in the Business Technology Center in the high school. The structure of the format is different than town meeting. It'll be round tables or circles of seats so that participants can talk with one another to discuss the pros and the cons of the given proposal that will come before them on town meeting night. This is not a vote. This is simply to get questions answered and a chance to learn more deeply about the issue and learn more about how they feel about the proposal. Should there be any time at the end of the meeting, we will have some room to discuss some of the other big items on the town meeting warrant, but the big focus of the evenings, both evenings, will be to discuss the DPW facility project. And this is in response to many citizens asking to have such kinds of forums, to be able to talk informally with one another.
Okay, and will our town manager be presenting anything there, or, like,
That's a question for him.
in
Yeah,
terms of the
I will-
proposal? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, I invite him to
Oh.
come. I've invited him to come. The DPW task force will make a
Well,
presentation.
the task force will be there. They'll have a PowerPoint presentation, I know, or?
Yeah, Well, we will be reserving some light refreshments. There is a
That's always a good
there is a method for responding or getting tickets, if you will, through Eventbrite. It's available on the moderator's Facebook page as well as the town's Facebook page. I think it's on the website as well. So if you're watching this, please go to the link and register for the event so we have a head count, quite honestly.
So we know how much food to get.
So we know how much food to get. Since the town will be providing refreshments, naturally I will be there. But we've invited Weston and Sampson, our engineers, to present the presentation on the project.
Okay.
I mean, the board knows that I've given my fair share of PowerPoints on this project and others, but I feel like the level of expertise that Weston and Sampson brings, not only that they brought to our design and our own project, but how they present the information, the context that they put it in, and their ability to really handle questions by relating it to similar projects in other communities, really does an exceptional job, I think, communicating the project. At each presentation I've seen them give, they've really helped, elevate the understanding. Maybe they didn't facilitate agreement in every case, but at least people understood much better what they were thinking about. So they will be giving the presentation. I will also be asking the moderator to allow them to give a briefer presentation than they'll be giving on the 11th and the 26th at town meeting on the 9th. Like I said, they excel at delivering the message. But they will be supported in both forums and town meeting by the DPW committee as well. I think that the most powerful voices on this project right now are those volunteer resident members of the DPW committee who are really knowledgeable and passionate advocates for the project.
Okay, great. Do any questions from the select board in regards to the forums that are scheduled? Mark?
Yeah, I guess, Rebecca, I think, clearly this is always something we wanted to do, and it's a great idea to do it, but I'd hate to see us shortchange two other significant issues that may be equally confusing or need equal kind of, I won't say equal time, but lots of time and for explanation, and that's the stormwater utility and potentially also the Dwight Road project that's being proposed. Is there any way you can actually work those into these?
Yes.
My concern is that those are going to take out oodles of time at town meeting. And I mean, just the stormwater utility is pages and pages of bylaws. How can we do something about that?
Oh, that's a great question, and yes. Since the warrant is jam-packed with substantial proposals, having some time at these forums will be important. And as significant a project as the DPW proposal is, I don't really envision it taking 3 hours to discuss on its own. And so I do anticipate having at least an hour, if not more, for the other two items that you mentioned, and perhaps a third. But I would welcome any.
Well, so it will be. I guess I'd like
Yeah.
to see it then advertised as such that it's not just it's maybe a 3-item agenda.
Well,
not just one.
Sure.
we talked at length
Yeah.
about this, and it's like a fight card or like a concert where it's
The main
town
event is the-
town meeting forum, public forum featuring the DPW project
Yeah.
and appearances by. Because I think in the discussion with the moderator, and I think she agrees, we don't know what people are going to want to talk about of the other articles. I think in terms of just cost and importance, that I think the board would agree that the DPW is the number one item on the agenda that in the non-budget category. But there are also things that are first-time issues for the community to see, stormwater utility and the diff, and they can generate a lot of questions. So we did say, I think we want to get the word out that there will be time after that, but we don't want someone who wants to ask a question about the water demand fee bylaw to say, no, you can't talk about that here. If we're in the room and we can answer the question quickly, we want to have the opportunity to do that. So I think we went back and forth on, should we limit it to just 4 articles or leave it more of a free-form discussion after the structured presentation on the DPW, and to some extent I think we're going to see how it goes. But we do. I also agree that we needed to leave some time to discuss the other issues.
And just to be clear, too, when I scheduled these initially, I only knew about the DPW proposal. I didn't know that there would be these other items. So, yes, it's the main event, but there will be time for the others.
Yeah, and is LCTV any chance of filming it so they can rebroadcast, edit it and rebroadcast the highlights, as they say?
It's
Sox and
difficult
two?
because it's not a traditional forum where you have the presentation and then Q&A. There will be small groups.
Okay.
So, we may have 4 groups of 10, let's say, and that doesn't really make for exciting TV. No one will understand what people are saying. People are not going to be mic'd. I have asked and sent an email and look forward to talking with LCTV to see if the presentations themselves could be made available. But the actual discussion of the issues won't be, because it's not meant for TV. It's meant for people to get their questions answered and talk about pros and cons.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions or from the select board? Other things? I really like the idea of breaking things into small groups and having discussions. I think that's great for community building. People still have a hard time meeting their neighbors in our town, and I think this is a great way for people to get out, understand what's going on, talk to your neighbors about these issues, important issues to the town, and get to meet folks. And I think it's and plus refreshments. I mean, you can't beat that.
And I will provide the results from the discussions in a report and post them on the website as soon as I can type them up. So,
I guess, Tom, my concern is that the way the DPW project gets explained, people can put their hands around. We're asking for them to approve the, eminent domain, taking of and funding of a DPW, and then it's why we need it. But the concept of the DIF, and certainly the concept of a stormwater utility, are very unique and not something that's innately, part of what people think of when they say what they're being asked to do, and those are no less important to the town getting through the town meeting in a timely manner. And so that's why I asked that those not be short-circuited. Clearly, there's an element of education on the DPW, but there's big-time education on those other 2 items, and it's less, pardon me, opinion swaying, and it's more, what the heck is this all about, and why is there a stormwater utility proposal at all, and what's the federal government got to do with it, and I think that's really important for people to understand that, and I think without that understanding, we're going to spend an awful lot of time at a town meeting trying to explain that.
All right, great. And so, again, the dates are the 11th and the 26th of April this month. And, it sounds like a great idea. And for those folks in the viewing audience who are concerned about the whole process of government, and you're thinking you want to get more involved in the democratic process, this sounds like a great way for people to do that. And so we encourage you to attend these meetings. And Rebecca, I know you'll do a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So now we can move back to the number 2, allegation of the DPW debt, general fund, water and sewer, and is Paul our presenter for this? Great. You sent us a...
So this is, Tom, if I may, just launch right into it. This is under... You're doing it to me again, Mark.
I know.
Like a hazmat suit, and he's got a persistent cold that he's given me at least twice. So So I had this under old business because we've talked here at the DPW about at the select board level about the project and how it's gonna be not funded, but how the costs are gonna be allocated between the general fund and the utility fund, the enterprise funds. And we've talked to bond counsel, and we've kind of run this up the flagpole that end, and there is gonna be some kind of allocation, like there would be for any other capital or other purchase that we make for the DPW. If we buy a backhoe, that's going to be used on water and sewer jobs, we allocate. So to give people a sense of what's this going to cost me, we need to, we have the ability to figure that out to the penny for people's tax bills by calculating the amount on the tax rate that'll add. And we can figure it out almost to the penny on water rate and sewer rates, but that's based on people's consumption. But we have to determine how we want to allocate those costs before we can do any of that. And Paul wrote a memo that explains the allocation that he has as kind of a conversation starter. Excuse me, which is based on the allocations we do for the budget. And then a few other concepts as well. So we just want to get the board thinking about this. To be honest with you, I'd like to come out of this with a fairly concrete understanding of how we're going to do this from this conversation right now, because we are preparing some marketing materials. We are getting ready for the forums, which will be, one of them is going to be upon us before we meet again. Right. And this is going to be a question that's going to be raised, and we need to have an answer. So I'll turn it over to Paul to kind of run through the memo. Most people want to just go right to question Q&A.
Well, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Almost self-explanatory.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen did a good job. It's how are we going to allocate this? Depending on the percentages allocated, it's going to have an effect on the tax rate, water, and the sewer rate. So, we're not pulling something out of the sky saying, it's going to be 50, 25, 25, or it's going to be 60, 20, 20. I think we need to have some type of mathematical calculation that makes sense, that's defensible, and then we can run the numbers saying it's going to be X, Y, and Z on the tax rate, it's going to be X, Y, and Z on the water rate, and X, Y, and Z on the sewer rate, so people have the exact impact that their pocketbooks are going to feel, and they're going to want to have that information. We do need these major projects. It's going to have an impact on their vote.
Yes, Mark.
Paul, first of all, thank you. This was a great analysis that you did, and I read through this, and I counter to what I thought I was going to think, going into it. I came out of it supporting what I think you're calling it the modified budget, which is approach B.
Right.
Because it's the budget, but without external influences like what we pay Springfield, which has no effect on
the rates,
on the actual cost of running the department. But the budget is the cost of running the department. So, personally, I think that was like a 75, 13, 12 or something like that.
Right.
Split, and that's the one that spoke to me. And like I said, when I first went into this, I didn't think that was the one I was going to be in favor of. But when I looked at your numbers, I thought that made a whole lot of sense, and I encourage other people to do that as well. Because, for example, we just got another part of our packet is the city of Springfield's increasing the water rate. Right. And there's no reason that because they increase the water rate, all of a sudden the water department needs to pay for more of the building.
Right.
And that's why I think taking the cost of water out, taking the cost of sewer treatment facilities out, and and taking the cost of trash, which is what takes out of the general rate, seemed to me to make an awful lot of sense. I think just it's a great proposal.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
One of the things that we didn't list here that we kind of kicked around for food for thought was a space allocation. Mm-hmm. There are distinct spaces in the plant facility that are dedicated to water and sewer, but then you'd have to come up with some kind of reasonable formula to allocate the cost share for the muster room, restrooms, things like that. And by the time you get done with the end, it's probably going to look exactly like we have now. So we did give that some thought, but there's such a limited amount of space that is solely dedicated to water and sewer that once you started going into formula territory, this was a lot more straightforward, I think, than doing it that way.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the select board? So,
I guess the only question I would have, Paul, for you is, I presume that we're gonna set this based on the 2018 budget, bond it, and then be done with it. We're not gonna adjust
Right,
this year
right.
after year after
We
year.
we
based
can't
on-
fluctuate the dollars
Okay.
every year, because
Well, that's what I-
be budgeted. Well, we're gonna lock it in, and that's the way it is. I don't think the budget's all that, I don't think they vary that much from year to year, that it's gonna be pretty standard throughout.
Well, Paul, if you want to, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposal B, which is the percentage of adjusted budgets for allocation of the capital costs of a new DPW facility.
okay, we have a second on that?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, and open for discussion on the proposal. Any-
Was that the, excuse me, the one that you recommended, B, or the average?
I actually recommended a combination of B and C. C is basically just an allocation of full-time equivalencies, and I took the average of B and C for D. I'm sorry, I actually recommended D, which is, again, an
Right,
average.
D, right.
It's an average of B and C, C being the allocation of full-time equivalencies. It is similar, the
pretty
general
close.
fund being 75.23% as opposed to 73.4. Between any one of those, we're in the ballpark.
So the,
I have a question,
yeah,
and I realize that everything here is totally legit. I guess I keep coming back and wondering, why wouldn't it just be as easy to just go for a bond and just bond the whole thing and not tamper with the water and sewage? Why, I understand the logic, you can do it, but I mean, I wonder why do we, what's your real thought process on why this is advantageous to do it this way instead of just general bond?
Well, we can certainly do it, but I think that the DPW has always been allocated to certain functions within there. And some of those functions, there's three main revenue sources. So it's just a simple allocation to match up with those revenue sources. You try to match up your expenditures to your revenue sources.
Well, I mean, you don't go off and get more fees coming in from your recreation, and they support recreation. There's enterprise money coming in on
They
recreation.
support, but they support the schools, they support everybody.
Right,
They clean the
right.
community, so, I mean,
Rich, if I could, I think that there are people who pay water and sewer fees who don't pay taxes, who ought to support this new facility through those water and sewer fees.
true, you have exempt properties.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a good point.
Ratepayers outnumber taxpayers.
Okay.
And it's not 100%, we're talking about, I think the total is 25%.
Okay, I didn't think about that one thing that you brought up. Okay. And that's likely enough justification right there.
Is that true?
Yeah, okay.
Ratepayers.
It's not a major thing, it's just I was just kind of asking, what was the,
But again, it's trying to match up expenditures with revenues.
yeah,
Water users.
yeah,
Pay a part of the
okay,
capital.
good.
all right, yeah, so that's good. Any other,
Mark, you made a motion for
Yeah.
B. Do you want to go with D, or do you, I mean,
They're so close.
a few percent difference, but,
What's
I
less of a
think
headache
B
to figure out?
is cleaner in terms of justification, whereas D is, we're doing some averaging and all that. I mean, we're talking about, I don't even know, what's the impact of 1% on,
I mean, the impact is small. I was just looking at the different variables and trying to get up something that made sense, and like I said, I just happened to look at full-time equivalencies, and
I mean, my sense is full-time equivalencies change based on our, like this year we added people to the sewer jet, but we could take them off, and it was,
Yeah.
it's more discretionary than it is the budget. The budget's not so discretionary. That's why I thought B was better. I just thought the others had too much of a discretionary component.
okay, that's fine.
okay.
You said 6 one, half dozen the other.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
Do you have any opposition to that?
No,
I mean, that you would voice?
no, again, I was just trying to think.
Then we can overrule Mark in a heartbeat.
He's just looking for a reason.
I mean, but I also understand about full-time equivalencies and how they can be moved, and FY18 happens to have one more in sewer this year, ironically, and things of that nature. I think, any one of them is justifiable.
I just want you to walk away with deep-seated hostilities about something. I just want to give you the opportunity to express yourself.
I'm able to hold those in and
Okay.
not show my true colors.
So then you're satisfied with the,
I'm satisfied with the motion, yes.
okay.
All right, so, yeah, I have no other comments, except I do agree that it's good to include everyone in the town who is utilizing town services like water and sewer, not just taxpayers. So, you ready to call for the vote? All those in favor? All right, it's moving around. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good.
All right. And then, next is revised water budget for the
Yes.
Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, and we're all happy to get that
A
notification.
little surprised.
We got a little surprise last week from the Springfield Water and Sewer Commissioners, based upon some capital projects that they want to include and allocate in FY18. There's estimating that our payment to them for FY18 is going to go up by roughly $256,000. It was budgeted at $856,000. To cover the cost of that. Actually, I think the budget was just slightly higher. The actual budget was just slightly higher to cover some other incidentals. But I mean, we're just talking about a $255,000, about a 20%, over a 20% increase that, at the 11th hour we're getting hit with. And the question is, how does this board want to handle it? There's a number of options. Town meeting is coming up. We can certainly amend the water budget on the floor of town meeting, or we can wait until the fall to amend the town budget and just add it to that. We also have to think about not only amending the budget to cover the excess in sewer, but the excess in the water costs, but we also need to think of the revenue side, where the money or the sources of funding that is going to come from. You folks voted rates at the end of January, maybe early February. We could amend those rates, we could, in the next couple of weeks to do this. We could think about funding some of it out of our retained earnings. We could do a combination of both. So again, there's a couple options that I had pointed out to you folks, and just kind of looking for feedback on how you folks want to handle this last minute ordeal.
And just, have we had this sort of increase in the past from Springfield?
We've had not in the 11th hour. We've had large increases, and we had the increases. They were known before we set the water and sewer rates for the most part.
Yeah.
It never has happened in this fashion where the increases have come after the fact.
All right, but our standard procedure has always been to make some adjustments to the water and sewer rates.
But Tom, we've also,
Yeah.
this was the first year or second year where we set the rates in January. Usually, we didn't set the rates till
We didn't set them until June,
July anyway, so this wouldn't have been a last-minute thing necessarily.
Right.
Right.
Based on when we set it. All right.
So-
So I did the math.
It raises about
30 cents.
30 cents, exactly. I put it into the format that we normally use for water and sewer rates.
I did the same thing, 30 cents. Can't just let it go.
Yeah, it is 30 cents. That's almost a 10% increase.
Yeah.
The rate that was voted was $3.08. And, again, it's.
We have to do it. Why don't we tell them we can't afford it and we're going to get it out of the Connecticut River? I was just told that that's a Class B plus
C+.
drinking water.
Yeah.
Let me know how that works out for you.
We're looking for Class A, I think.
So I feel the word pardon, a moment of crowing on behalf of Paul and I. Even though they showed us when we presented the rates that the costs were going down, we still urged the board and the Water and Sewer Commission wisely kept the rates the same, even though Springfield said that they were going to lower, that the rates were going to go down in FY18. And we're always talking about trying to avoid fluctuations in the rate, and a lot of the fluctuations come from policy decisions made by the commission, and no other factor. When they're going to do capital, when they're not going to do capital, when they set rates, they make changes. That we have an excellent partnership with them. I think they are sincere people, and they don't like putting their member communities in these positions. But nevertheless, these types of things do come up, and so I think we wanted to make sure that just saying let's burn up retained earnings to cover the gap, we felt the amount was too great to justify that, especially if we're going to be going to the market for debt. I mean, the town reserves are pretty much what our bondholders look at, but if part of this debt is going to be issued against the utilities, having some retained earnings set aside is helpful in that regard. And we also thought that we probably couldn't increase the full amount of the, absorb the full amount of the increase right now if the board was going to keep with its policy of having the rate set when consumption is happening. So we wanted to lay out a list of options for the board to consider, for the commission, for the Water and Sewer Commissioners to consider, so we would know what to do in terms of next steps.
Mark.
So the options are make a change now, say, sorry, we messed up and didn't know about this, and the change is effective essentially immediately, right? The other one is to say, we're going to bill the second half of 2018 at a different rate from the first half, recoup half of this increase, so that keeps with the theory of, we tell you the rate before you consume it. But the nature of this, I mean, I went in and did the same thing, Paul. I put it in this spreadsheet. It comes up dead on 30 cents on the water rate. I don't see how we cannot do something immediately, and I know we've tried not to change rates while people are still consuming the water, but I think we've got to do something. I would even consider doing something, like go 20 cents the first half of the year and go up another 15 cents the second half of the year, which people aren't going to like, and if we can do that. But I also recall the graphs we had up here a couple of years ago that kind of predicted this was going to happen, and then they said, oh, we changed our mind. Apparently they've changed their mind back.
Well, I don't know if you looked at the material that the Water and Sewer Commission sent in, and ironically that when you look at the FY19 estimated amount for the town, or for their budget, it actually drops by 10%. So we are going to have some type, I don't want to say we're going to have a fluctuation, who knows what they're going to do.
But no, because we're going to make up for that with the capital we just talked about from our DPW facility.
You have it built in already.
Right?
Yep. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if that's 10 cents, but, because I haven't done the
it's
math.
one way of looking and moderating the fluctuation.
Richard?
Yeah, just a general question. Is there any type of regional pushback on the commission for doing this kind of stuff mid-year like this?
I would defer to the town manager. I think he sits on the regional board with the superintendent.
Of the Water and Sewer Commission?
Right. You folks, you've met with them on a few
Yeah, not in a
occasions.
while, though, not on this. I think the town engineer actually represents the town on that board. I've been in enough meetings with them to know that they have a very aggressive infrastructure improvement plan that is, I think, been deferred for years, and they're really trying to make a sincere effort to upgrading their infrastructure, including what is driving a lot of this, which is a river crossing. And we don't pay on capital that we don't touch, that our system doesn't touch, but there are parts of this that we do. I think part of that is driving part of the cost. I guess, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, these kind of surprises shouldn't be hitting us, so, I mean, this is not a small surprise.
No.
And, I realize they have the right to do this, that, and the other, but I'm just wondering, they're the only game in town. We don't have an option. And that bothers me, too, that they just summarily come in and slap 30% increase on our water rates halfway through the year, or a third of the way through the year, and we didn't know it was coming.
Right.
There's been zero communication up to the point where they just do it. And there's no other public utility that you take that behavior out of without going and getting in their face.
Well, I wouldn't say that there's been no communication. I haven't been a part of the communications, but I know Pete Thurber talks to them regularly. I think there's been communication, but we were all surprised by the communication we got that yielded the report. But we've known that they've been planning for these capital investments for some time, and we've reported on it here that we knew these things were coming. We just weren't sure when.
Well, weren't they taking reserves? Weren't they building reserves? Were they doing nothing, or just throw it out?
They're trying to get the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission was created by the control board, right?
No, I don't think
it's
so.
been around
I think they were there before the control board came in.
Because I thought that had been, but not 50 years. I mean, it's a relatively new.
I don't think they've been 50 years.
It's a
They've
relatively
probably
new
been
creation.
20 or 25, maybe.
I thought it was more recent then, because I thought Mario, who worked at the city of Springfield, said that it transitioned during his time there, but maybe not.
I think it was created before.
Oh, okay.
I'm not quite sure how the transition would have been, but I'm pretty sure it was there before the control board was there.
Okay. But excuse me. But either way, I mean, they're still. Let me say, when we were renewing the agreement, we talked a lot about how they were putting forward a proposal that didn't work for us, and we had said at the time that they are the only game in town unless we want to go down with pails to the Connecticut River and get
Dig our well again.
dig the wells again, but that wasn't great either. But they are, like I said, they are a good partner. I don't want to make it seem like this one surprise should be a deal breaker. It is a surprise. It is a big one. But I think that it's not. I don't sense it's profiteering on the commission's end. I think it's just
I'm not saying that, Stephen. I'm just saying 30% is quite a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. That's the only thing I'm saying. I mean, somebody should have been saying, folks, you got a major increase coming this year. Take it into your rate consideration. So we could have been evaluating all that when we sat in here.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and the information we got in December said one thing, and now, on March 28th, this letter is sent to us, and what happened in between, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I agree 100% what you just said. And, coupled on the discussion that we just had about putting additional on for the DPW complex on our water.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, to be honest with you, my recommendation was do a combined, use retained earnings to offset some of the increase, and then go back in the fall and adjust for the second billing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just make mention of one other thing about the water budget, that there's about $600 and some odd thousand that we have appropriated for debt service in FY18. And the nice thing is that in FY19, that number drops by, it's $601,000 we appropriated in FY18. That number drops down to $500,000 in FY19. So we'll be able to absorb even a little bit more.
But we
through the
should
raise.
have projects to come in and replace that, though.
Mm-hmm.
We should. I mean, if we're doing our game right.
You're right, we should,
Right.
and the good thing about that is those projects won't hit the retained earnings. So if we
Right.
do take something out of retained earnings now, it won't get hit with capital
Yeah.
projects in the near future.
But I'm talking about your bond lifting off. I mean, we should have a rolling amount that we're doing on infrastructure repairs, and they should be doing the same thing. I mean, we're trying to get ours up
Yeah.
to where
Right.
it's legit, and we're making improvements now.
And quite honestly, we have the opportunity in FY19 also. We do have some bond anticipation notes that, we could simply accelerate in order to fill that gap too. So we have some tools that
Right.
we can manage that a lot easier.
Yeah, and I hear everything you're saying, it's wonderful, but we're doing it because they did this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the only thing I'm saying. 30% hits a lot to slap you with.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Richard, that when you look at a state agency, or, part of this town of city of Springfield, and there's water and sewer, to have this kind of a change,
Yeah.
Mid-year, at 30%, if it happened in business, right? I mean, Bill, if you saw in business, and all of a sudden they say, well, it's going to be 30% more, I mean, if you were working with that company, you'd say, I'd like an audit to see what's going on, right?
Well, you have to cut costs someplace else.
Yeah.
Also, but yeah.
But if they charge, if all of a sudden they say, well, we miscalculated by 30%, you'd be,
Well, I can only relate it like in my business.
Yeah.
If you're on a net lease and all of a sudden your common area maintenance charges go up by 30%, you have the right to audit.
the right to audit, yeah.
I mean, they do get audited. I mean, it's not a ward of the city of Springfield. It's an independent commission.
Right.
Yeah.
And they do get audited, and we get copies of all that stuff. I think to your point, and I'm not in private business, but even when dealing with vendors or the situation like this, when someone says we need to go up another 30%,
Yeah.
the options are you review, okay, well, do we want to pay it or not? And if we don't want to pay it,
Yeah.
what's our fallback position? And
There's no
then
fallback.
in this case, we quickly default to, okay, well, and this is why we're here. how do we minimize the impact of the ratepayer? We can't rewrite the rates for the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission to get approved.
Right.
How do we minimize the impact of the ratepayer? And that's what we have here.
So, so this is a good preliminary discussion, I guess, and do we need to decide tonight if we're going to make a change to the rate? Is that what you're,
I don't think you need to decide tonight, but the sooner you get the word out to the users who are already consuming, especially before the watering season starts, the better. You know, I think this proposal that also came in also mentioned that this is a proposed budget to the Water and Sewer Commission. I don't believe it's been finalized yet. So that's the other thing, that we need to make sure that we have their final numbers and it didn't fluctuate either up or down from what they've given us last week.
Okay.
So you don't want to vote then?
I guess I would just like to find out before you vote, is it their final number?
Okay.
You know, they may take something off of there that may have an impact, that may, you know, may make this look a little bit better and more palatable.
Okay.
well, that would make me even more nervous if they said, well, we're going to go up 30%, and if we don't, you know, if we're willing to go along with it, they say, well, in that case, it's 35%, or else, well, now it's only 20%.
I think you folks just need to recognize what road are you gonna take? Do you wanna, you know, fix the rate now and get it all done with, or do you wanna do it 50/50, or however you wanna do it is a big question.
So Paul, can I ask, if, you know, kind of, unfortunately it's an assignment, but when they get going with this thing and come up with what the numbers are, I mean, the unknown for me is what happened to our retained earnings over the last year. I know the numbers as I was looking at it monthly appeared that we were running a usage above the budgeted 788, and so, you know, is there room in that retained? I know the retaining earnings had been low, but is there room to actually pull some numbers out of there? A, and B, what does this look like over, you know, the next 2 or 3 years? And I think to make an informed decision, both may help us.
Well, I can tell you right now what the projected FY17 numbers are with regard to water retained earnings, and they're found on the bottom of those rate sheets that were provided back in January. We started the year with just under $600,000 in water retained earnings. We're going through town meeting. We're roughly going to use about $355,000 worth of retained earnings, mainly for 2 water projects that are the bulk of that. We also did a water project in the fall. I'm anticipating excess water revenues this year of at least $200,000. We're on target for that, a little bit plus. But I'm hoping that there's some appropriations, and I'm just putting in a number of $75,000, that if there's $75,000 worth of budgetary turnbacks, that when all that is said and done and all those actions take place, we're just at the minimum level again of just over $500,000, and that's what the board, you know, had as a minimum set on their policies. We would end up at about $515,000, the number that I have right now. But I can certainly update that, Mark, and look at basically look at the excess revenues again and potentially scan the appropriations to see what's going to be turned back and update that again.
And also, if we can put in, you know, update any major I'm just looking at, you know, if we're at 308 this year, if 2 years from now we really only need to be, you know, 330, why are we going up to 335? You know, or why would we go up to 335 to bring it back down if we could do some intermediate amount? That's my only.
It's fine. Again, I'll look at this and
Thank you.
I can prepare another one of these rate sheets and.
But I think we ought to. I think we, you know, if it stays the way it is, I don't think we can absorb this, you know, $285,000, whatever it is, increase.
No, I wouldn't want you to absorb it all out of retained earnings. I think it has to be some gradual steps forward minimally, if not one big forward step.
all right, so then,
So no action at this time, and we're
No
going to
action.
generate some more
We
information.
will run these again. We'll find out if the commission actually voted these numbers, and we'll input some of these numbers with some other updated information on the retained earnings.
Can we direct the town manager to tell them we're taking our business elsewhere?
Well, it'd be nice if we could,
Put in rain barrels, or distribute rain barrels to all our residents or something.
yeah. Well, if we could, what I would suggest, the Mayor of Springfield, you could just suggest that he has every person who works for the Water and Sewer Commission to give an explanation of what they do every 15 minutes.
It's not the mayor. He's a customer just like the rest of us.
Customers just like the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm sure Springfield residents are probably going to get hit with the same increase.
I would have to imagine, so it's across the board for all the other users. So it's,
Yeah.
Long Meadow's gonna get hit,
All right, well, thank you for the heads up on this. So hopefully things will be a little more reasonable in another week or so, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be. All right, we only have 3 different things on the agenda. The next thing would be to set the fall town meeting dates. And so we've gotten some information on those dates, right?
Mm-hmm. November 7th is the recommended date.
Make a motion that we accept the recommendations of town manager, hold our fall town meeting on November 7th.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the November 7th dates? Yeah?
Doesn't this seem, this seems to me earlier than we normally do this. Usually we don't set the fall town meeting till at least after the spring town meeting has been held.
School asked for the
annual
date.
town meeting has
The
been.
school's
Yeah.
asked for the date because of the scheduling, right?
Right, they're already scheduling their FY, or their next school year's calendar, and
So this is a request from the
Wanted to lock
school
it up.
department, saying that that would be helpful. Those are dates they have available. That's right. So, good. Any other discussion? on
Well,
that?
yeah, I guess my concern is, because we've done this before, November 7th is an election day. I know it's an off-year election, but
It's not an election day.
we don't have an election in
we have no
town.
elections in Massachusetts that day.
We don't have any elections in town, like the city of Springfield may have an election.
But Kathy has no reason to have anything at the,
Kathy has no reason to have an election.
anything at the community house, that there's not going to be some statewide referendum
This was
that
her.
comes
This
up.
was her date, wasn't this?
Yeah, she actually worked with the school
Okay.
department. She had 2 dates, and again, this is the preferable date offered by the schools, which was acceptable to Catherine also.
Okay, as long, because I'm just not trying to put her in 2 places at the same time. I'll put our entire town clerk's department in 2 places at the same time.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, right? Second, who will second that? And if there's no further discussion, I guess we can vote on it. So those who agree, November 7th date, all right, that's great. And then we have a vote ballot question that needs to go on. And we can,
Yeah, the ballot
discuss that.
question is really right out of the statute. It really cannot vary. Most of that language is right out of the statutes, basically with the exception of the rationale or the reasoning of the bond, which is to acquire land, construction, equip the new Department of Public Works facility. But other than that, it's right out of the statute.
okay.
And all we need is one question. We don't need multiple.
You don't need one question. It's because again, we're doing both the acquiring
And
and the building and equipping all in one bond. And that's also voted in one article, so.
Okay, so this is basically in regards to Article Number 10, the bond authorizing the DPW land, building, and equipment. And so the article would just basically be asking people if they would agree to this, that shall the town of Long Meadow be allowed to be exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called amounts required to pay for the bond issue in order to acquire land, construct, and equip a new Department of Public Works facility, and they can answer yes or no. So, any other discussion on this? We didn't have a motion yet, right?
correct.
Can we have a motion to accept this wording? All right, Bill, okay, and we have a second?
Yep, second.
And second, and any other discussion on this?
Again, I think,
Stephen?
and maybe you mentioned it, I was typing. If residents ask you, why'd you put this on already, it's to meet the statutory deadline for the question.
Which is 35 days prior to the
Right,
election.
if it fails at town meeting, it'll be printed on the ballot, but it'll be a null and void question.
If it fails at town meeting, I mean, truthfully, what could happen, if it fails at town meeting and it passes at the election, you would really have another chance to go back within so many days. But again, that will be a choice. The way that Article number 10 is worded, it basically says it's contingent upon this happening also, so one can't happen with approval of the other.
Yeah. And it's just a statutory deadline to approve this beforehand. It's no presumption of approval at town meeting, it's just to meet the statutory deadline.
Right. Again, Catherine has to have this 35 days before the election. The election is June 13th, so it really has to be done almost tonight.
Yep.
Okay, so then, and when was the last time we've done something like this, where we've had to, did we do this with the school?
Yes.
Right? So
Yes,
we
we
had
did it with the
approved
high
there, and then
school.
we voted also, so it's along the same line, so people shouldn't be too confused by it.
Can I just ask a procedural
Yeah.
question? And Paul, it may not be for you, maybe for Stephen. So if we're doing this tonight for that 35 days, I go back to what happens if there's a vote at town meeting that somebody wants to appeal through a referendum? I thought that was also going to be able to be on the June 13th.
I believe that could also happen on the June 13th ballot also. If they want to appeal a vote at town
Right.
meeting through
So,
referendum.
but doesn't that need 35 days?
I think there's something within the charter that outlines
okay.
that it's not 35
Oh,
days.
okay.
There's something else within the charter
All right. Okay,
that
thanks.
dictates that time.
And they can
Okay.
also call for special election.
Well, yeah, but the whole deal was we're trying to prevent a second election
Right.
if you really
And
wanted to
I
sit
think
down.
Catherine set that, or recommended
Right.
that June 13th date
Based on the town, right.
based upon the town meeting date.
That's why I was surprised that we needed to do this.
I take it back. I mean, if it's June, you could actually wait until the first part of May.
But fine,
I
we're
actually
here,
do
we'll
this,
do
but
it.
please,
This isn't
you
going
know,
to change, I get
Right.
it.
No,
It's
it's
not
not
gonna
gonna
Okay. Richard, did you have another comment?
No, I was
or-
gonna, I'm ready to vote.
He's ready to vote,
I'm ready
okay,
to vote.
call for the vote, all those in favor? All right, it's approved, thank you, and the last item, prior to the basketball tip-off, one-day liquor license from the KSC, and if,
I move we approve the one-day liquor license for James Jones for April 29th, 2017.
okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this further?
Be interesting to see how people fare on the spelling bee towards the end of the event, if they're serving liquor at it, but just,
That's the handicap.
I won't be participating.
That's funny.
Okay, let's call for a vote then. Those in favor, approval? It's all approved. And so is there any subcommittee reports that we need to discuss tonight? No? Well, we are just about done. I guess we can call for adjournment if someone wants to make a
Soon as
motion.
we sign this thing.
All right, we just signed this, and
Yeah, I guess you can do it when we're closed, too.
we're not having an executive session this evening, so we'll be, as we end this, it'll be all over. And so we have a motion to
So move.
adjourn. Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? All right, meeting adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, thank you for watching, and have a good evening.
And don't forget the forum on the April 11th.
Yes, the 11th and 26th. Thank you.
need to sign, or is this just?
Yeah, we
No,
need to
everybody
sign.
has signed.